The moment that breaks you quietly, exhaustion speaks before anger ever can. There are moments when you don't even have the strength to be angry anymore, not because the pain isn't real, but because you're tired in a way sleep can't fix. Your body is moving, but your spirit feels drained. You're not shouting. You're not fighting. You're just empty. Let me tell you something. Anger needs energy. Exhaustion is what happens after you've already given too much for too long. This is the stage where people misunderstand you. They think you're calm. They think you've accepted it. But the truth is, you're just worn down. You've been strong for years. You held things together when they should have fallen apart. You smiled when you wanted silence. You showed up when you wanted rest. And now, there's nothing left to push with, only a quiet heaviness in your chest. That's not weakness. That's what happens when a person carries more than they were meant to carry alone. When pain arrives in a whisper, instead of a shout. Some pain doesn't come yelling. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't raise its voice. It leans in close and speaks softly, and that's why it hurts more. Shout gives you something to push against. Whisper sneaks past your guard. It sounds calm. It sounds simple, but it lands deep. You replay it later. In the quiet. In the dark, when no one is watching, and you wonder why something said so gently left such a heavy mark, because the softest words, spoken at the wrong moment, can cut deeper than anger ever could. Why cruel words hurt most when you're already empty? Why do certain words stay with you longer than others? Why do they echo when everything else fades? Because they arrive when you're already worn down. When your defenses are gone, when you're not ready, you can handle pain. When you're full, you can fight when you have strength. But when you're empty, even small words feel heavy. They land on old wounds. They press on places you tried to protect. And suddenly, you're not just hurt by what was said today. You're hurt by everything that was never healed. That's why it feels so personal. That's why it feels so deep. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. Loud. Abuse warns you. Quiet betrayal disarms you. Loud cruelty gives you a signal. You see it coming. You brace yourself. But quiet betrayal feels safe at first. It wears a calm face. It speaks without force. And that's how it gets close to you. Don't prepare for it. You don't protect yourself from it because you didn't expect it. That's what makes it dangerous. It doesn't push you back. It pulls you in. And by the time you realize what happened, the damage is already done. Let me tell you something. Betrayal rarely announces itself. Let me tell you something. Betrayal doesn't warn you. It doesn't give signs you can easily read it. Comes from places you trusted. From voices you thought were safe. From people you didn't think you needed protection from. That's why it feels confusing. That's why you question yourself. You ask, did I misunderstand? Am I overreacting? No. You felt it because it was real. Betrayal doesn't need volume. It only needs access. Words that cut like knives wrapped in calm voices. Some words don't scream. They slice. They come wrapped in calm tones. In steady voices. In faces that don't change. And that's why they stay with you. They don't leave bruises. They leave questions. They leave doubt. But remember this. Calm voice does not mean kind intent. Soft words can still carry sharp edges. And when those words finally sink in, something inside you begins to shift. Not loudly. Not suddenly. Quietly. When cruelty is justified as truth. When harm is disguised as honesty. There are people who hurt you and then hide behind words like, I'm just being real. They say it like honesty gives them permission to wound. Like truth has to be sharp to matter. But let's be clear, honesty does not require harm. Truth does not need to bruise to be real. This is how cruelty slips through unnoticed. It wears the mask of being direct. It borrows the tone of confidence. We've seen it in families. In workplaces, in everyday conversations where someone crosses a line and calls it normal, and when you react, they turn it around on you. You're too sensitive. This is just how it's done. No, this is how harm hides in plain sight. Breaking down the sentence, you deserve this. Few sentences carry more weight than that one. You deserve this. It doesn't just hurt, it rewrites the story. Suddenly, the pain isn't about what happened to you, it's about who you are. That sentence plants doubt. It pushes shame where care should have been, It makes you question your own worth. And the danger is subtle, because if you believe you deserved it, you stop protecting yourself. You stop asking for better. You stop expecting fairness. That's not truth. That control disguised as judgment, how blame quietly shifts onto the wounded. Watch how blame moves, It rarely stays where it belongs. Instead of holding the person who caused harm responsible, it slides onto the one who felt it. What did you do to cause this? Why didn't you handle it better? And suddenly, the wound becomes evidence against you. This is how people avoid facing their own behavior. They hand you the weight instead, and if you're already tired, already worn down, you might accept it, not because it's true, but because you don't have the energy to fight it. Is real, but responsibility is often misassigned. Pain is real. Your pain is real, but pain does not mean guilt. Feeling hurt does not mean you caused it. There's a difference between being part of a situation and being responsible for harm. That line gets blurred on purpose because if they can convince you that your pain is your fault, they never have to change. And that's a heavy lie to carry. Who benefits when you believe your suffering is your fault? Ask yourself this: who gains when you stay quiet and ashamed? Not you, never you. The benefit goes to those who don't want to face what they did, to those who prefer comfort over honesty. If you blame yourself, they stay clean. If you doubt yourself, they stay untouched. That's not truth. That's escape. Gaslighting is fog, and it makes you doubt solid ground. Gaslighting works like fog, slow, quiet, disorienting, at first. You can still see the road. Then shapes blur, then even your own steps. Feel unsure, you start questioning what you felt, what you heard, what you know. And the hardest part is this: fog doesn't shout, it just settles until you can't tell which way is forward anymore. The hidden cost of staying silent, the exhaustion that comes from keeping the peace. Keeping the peace sounds noble, but let's talk about the cost. It costs sleep. It costs pieces of costs pieces of you that don't come back easily. Every time you swallow words, your body remembers. Every time you stay quiet to avoid tension, the weight builds, and one day, you're not calm. Your drained out peace that requires you to disappear is not peace, it's slow exhaustion. Silence feels safer until it starts costing you everything. Silence feels safe in the moment, it avoids conflict, it keeps things smooth, but safety that shrinks you is temporary. Over time, silence takes more than it gives, It takes your voice, it takes your sense of self, and one day, you wake up tired without knowing why. That's the cost catching up, if you don't speak for yourself. Someone else will decide your worth. Here's the hard truth: if you don't speak for yourself, someone else will define you. They'll decide what you deserve, what you should accept, what you should tolerate, not because they know you, but because you left space for them to decide. And silence does not protect you from that. It invites it. Silence teaches people exactly how to treat you. Silence teaches lessons, even when you don't mean it to. Every time you say nothing, a message is sent. This is okay. This will continue. Not because you agreed, but because no boundary was placed. People learn quickly, and silence is a powerful teacher. Silence is not maturity when it costs your soul. Silence is often praised as being grown, as being patient, as being strong. But maturity does not require self-ersure. If staying quiet breaks something inside you, that's not growth. That's loss. You were not meant to shrink to survive. Unspoken. Pain is emotional debt that always comes. Pain you don't speak doesn't disappear. It waits. Like unpaid debt. It collects weight. And one day, it shows up. In exhaustion. In distance. In sudden breaking points. And that's when another betrayal appears. From blood. When family chooses comfort over the shock of being let down by your own blood, nothing prepares you for this kind of hurt. Strangers can disappoint you, but family? That lands differently. You expect support. Understanding. At least honesty. Instead, you're met with silence, or excuses. Or distance. And the shock isn't loud. It's numbing. Why? Family often protects comfort instead of truth. Family bonds can be strong, but comfort is often stronger. Truth disrupts routines. Truth asks people to choose sides. And many people avoid that at all. Cost. So they stay neutral, which often means staying silent, not because they don't see the harm, but because facing it feels inconvenient. Loyalty requires courage. Convenience requires silence. Loyalty isn't quiet when harm is happening. It speaks. It stands. Convenience stays. Still. It watches. It waits for things to pass. And that's the divide. Courage versus comfort. Why standing for truth makes people uncomfortable. Truth forces decisions, and decisions make people uneasy. It asks them to risk approval, to step out of ease. To face tension. So many choose silence instead, not because truth is wrong, but because it's demanding. Not everyone who shares blood shares backbone. This is a hard lesson, but an honest one. Shared blood does not guarantee strength. It does not guarantee support. Some people stay quiet to protect themselves. Even if it costs you, they saw. They knew. They stayed quiet. They saw. The hurt. They knew the truth. They stayed quiet. Not once. Not briefly. Repeatedly. And silence, repeated, becomes a choice. The moment you realize this was never about them, and that clicks. This wasn't about their limits or their fear. This was about you choosing what happens next. And in that moment, the focus shifts inward. The illusion of endurance as strength when suffering gets praised instead of questioned. Somewhere along the way, suffering started getting praised. People began calling endurance a virtue without asking what it was costing the person who was enduring. You're so strong, they say. You handle so much, they say. But no one asks how much you've lost in the process. This kind of praise is dangerous because it teaches you to stay in pain longer than you should. It teaches you that leaving harm means you failed. But strength was never meant to mean staying where you were breaking. Strength was never meant to mean bleeding quietly so others feel comfortable. If pain is constant, it should be questioned. Not celebrated. Why enduring everything slowly erases you. When you endure everything, something small disappears each time. Your opinions. Your needs. Your sense of self start adjusting instead of speaking. You start accepting instead of asking. You start shrinking without noticing. At first, it feels like patience. Later, it feels like emptiness. You look in the mirror and wonder when you stop recognizing yourself. That's the quiet cost of constant tolerance. You don't break all at once. You fade. Endurance without boundaries is self-abandonment. Let me say this clearly. Endurance without boundaries is not strength. It is leaving yourself behind. Boundaries are not walls. They are lines that say, this far, no further. Without them, endurance becomes self-neglect. Keep giving while receiving harm. You keep showing up while being worn down. Strength does not require self-sacrifice that destroys you. Strength includes knowing when to stop. Standing in fire and calling it. Loyalty pictures someone standing in fire and calling it loyalty. Calling it love. Calling it duty. That doesn't make the fire any less real. And it doesn't make the burns disappear. Loyalty that hurts you is misplaced. Devotion that costs your well-being is not noble. Fire doesn't care why you're standing in it. It only burns. Long can you survive by shrinking yourself? Ask yourself this: how long can you survive by becoming smaller? How long can you keep quiet when something inside you wants to speak? How long can you bend before you snap? Shrinking may keep things calm for a while, but it slowly takes everything else. You were not meant to live folded in half. Pain tolerated becomes pain. Repeated pain that is tolerated doesn't end. It repeats. It returns in new forms. With new faces. And familiar patterns, until something inside you wakes up and says, "This cannot continue." The moment you stop explaining yourself, the day you realize explaining never saved you, there comes a day when it finally clicks. Explaining never protected you. You explained your feelings. You explained your reasons. You explained your pain, and still nothing changed, because some people never wanted to understand. They wanted you tired. That realization hurts, but it also frees you. Why? Some people don't want clarity, they want control. Some people ask questions not to learn, but to wear you down. They prayed not to understand, so you keep talking. Every explanation gives them more space to twist things, more chances to confuse you. This isn't confusion. It's control. And once you see that, you stop feeding it. You don't owe clarity to people committed to misunderstanding you. Hear this clearly. You don't owe clarity to people who refuse to hear you. You don't owe endless words. You don't owe proof of pain. You don't owe permission to protect yourself. Understanding is a two-way street. And if they won't meet you halfway, you're allowed to stop walking. No more defending. No more proving. No more begging. No more defending yourself to people who already decided. No more proving your worth. No more begging to be treated right. Release that weight. It was never yours to carry. Peace begins where explanations end. Closing the courtroom where you were always on trial. Imagine closing a courtroom where you were always the accused. No jury. No fairness. No end. You step out and the noise stops. You don't have to argue your existence anymore. You simply live it. That's freedom. Choosing peace over approval changes everything. When you choose peace over approval, things shift. Some people leave. Some get uncomfortable, but you breathe easier. You sleep better. That trade is worth it. That's when real strength begins, not in shouting, not in fighting, but in walking forward without needing to explain. Redefining strength for the next chapter, letting go of the old definition of strength. Old definition taught you to survive at all costs, to endure quietly, to push through pain without pause. But survival is not the same as living. It's time to let that definition go. Strength is clarity, not endurance. Strength is knowing what harms you and choosing not to stay there. Clarity saves energy. Endurance drains it. One builds you, the other wears you down. Strength is boundaries, not silence. Hide sinus. Pain. Boundaries protect you. Strength speaks calmly and clearly. It does not disappear to keep others comfortable. What if strength is choosing yourself without guilt? What if choosing yourself is not selfish? What if it's necessary? What if guilt was never meant to guide your life? Strength may feel quiet, but it feels right. You are allowed to change, even if others don't like it. You are allowed to change, even if it upsets others, even if it challenges old roles. Growth does that. When you change, everything around you reacts, not because you're wrong, but because you're no longer predictable. And that reaction is proof. The backlash after you. Choose yourself. Why resistance always follows self-respect. Moment you choose yourself, resistance shows up. Not because you did something wrong, but because you changed the pattern. People get used to who you were when you stayed quiet, when you adjusted, when you carried more than your share. Self-respect disrupts that comfort. It shifts balance, and anything that shifts balance invites pushback. This resistance is not failure. It is evidence that something has changed. Growth often feels lonely at first, not because you're wrong, but because you're no longer bending. Accusations and guilt are the first weapons used when you stop giving in. Accusations follow quickly. You've changed. You're selfish. You're difficult now. These words are meant to pull you back, to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel guilty for protecting your space, This is not honesty. This is pressure. Guilt is often used when control starts slipping. And once you see that, the words lose their power. When you stop being useful, you're suddenly difficult. As long as you were useful, things were smooth, as long as you said yes. You were appreciated, but the moment you set limits, the tone changes. You're no longer easy. You're labeled difficult. That label isn't about who you are, it's about what you stop providing. Approval that disappears. When you set boundaries with never real support, crabs in a bucket will always pull you back down. Picture crabs in a bucket. When one tries to climb out, the others pull it back. Not out of hatred, out of fear. Growth reminds people of what they avoided. Your strength highlights their comfort with staying stuck. That's why pullback happens, not because you're wrong, but because you're moving. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Not every voice deserves your response. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Silence can be strength when it protects you. Distance can be care. You don't have to correct every story told about you. Your life speaks louder than words ever could. Peace is not negotiable and never was. Peace is not something you bargain with. It's not something you earn by suffering. It was always yours to protect. Once you understand that, boundaries stop feeling harsh. They start feeling necessary. Teaching the next generation through action. Children learn more from what you tolerate than what you say. Children watch closely. They notice tone. They notice posture. They notice what you accept. You can give advice all day, but what you tolerate teaches louder lessons. They learn how to treat others by watching how you allow yourself to be treated. Your actions become their guide. What does your silence teach the ones watching you? Silence teaches too. Even when you think it DOESN single quotes T. It teaches endurance. It teaches fear. It teaches staying small. This isn't about blame. It's about awareness. When you speak with calm strength, you show another way. Boundaries are lessons, not punishments. Boundaries are not about control. They're about care. They teach respect. They teach limits. They teach self-worth. When children see boundaries, they learn that safety matters, that well-being matters, and that lesson stays. Courage is learned by watching posture, not hearing lectures. Courage is absorbed through behavior, through how you stand, how you respond, how you walk away when needed. Children feel strength before they understand words. They copy calm. They copy clarity. Healing is inherited too. Pain can pass through generations, but so can healing. When you choose better, it doesn't stop with you. It reaches further. Your choices rewrite what comes next. This is how cycles finally end, not with speeches, not with force, but with steady, quiet change. The quiet power of walking away. Whole walking away is not weakness, it's completion walking. Away doesn't mean you lost. It means you finished the lesson. You stayed long enough to learn. Not long enough to break. Leaving can be an act of strength when staying costs too much. You don't need closure from those who caused the wound. Closure does not come from them. It comes from understanding yourself. Waiting for others to explain keeps you tied to the past. Letting go sets you free. You don't need answers to move forward. You survived. You learned. You rose differently. You survived what you thought would crush you. Learned what you will never accept again. You rose with clearer eyes, not harder. Colder. Just wiser. Leaving the battlefield without trophies, but with your soul. Some victories are quiet. Don't leave with applause. You leave with Peace dot, and that is enough dot. Stand tall. Stay. Clear. Protect your peace. Stand. Tall in who you've become. Stay clear in what you allow. Protect your peace without apology dot. This is your life. You don't need their permission to be free. You never did.